So the Imperial Fist supplement isn't out yet, but let's entirely jump the gun and start talking list theories. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, the 40k strategy channel, where we've been going through the new Space Marine Codex and uncovering what tasty combos and tricks we can. Today we're going to have a quick look at one of the lists that I've been playing around with that's trying to get the most out of the Imperial Fist's new doctrine, the Legacy of Dawn. Now I'm recording this before we actually know all the contents of the Imperial Fist supplement, so I do admit that there will be some holes in this. We don't know exactly what stratagems will buff up certain units, we don't know what warlord traits and relics we'll get yet, but in the meantime, just purely going off what units are very good with the Imperial Fist's chapter trait and also their boosted Devastator doctrine, it'd be interesting to see exactly what we can come up with. As my last list was nearly entirely tanks, I thought we'd go for a more infantry based approach this time. Now this isn't super optimised, but it's just a rough idea of what sort of things you can achieve if you spend the points on certain units. So without further ado, into the list. Firstly, the main list starts with a small buff castle of characters. We've got a Primaris Chapter Master, Primaris Lieutenant, and a Primaris Ancient, equipped with the Standard of the Emperor Ascendant, which gives the 9-inch chance to make a shooting attack when your model gets killed. This will give us a decent aura range where we can put a lot of units that will be able to take advantage of all three of these buffs, and we're going to absolutely load it up with heavy bolters. Inside this super elite buff zone, we're going to have 3 squads of heavy bolter devastators, which each have a storm bolter on the sergeant, 4 heavy bolters, 3 regular marines with bolt guns, and an armorium cherub. So each of these squads will be putting out 15 heavy bolter shots turn 1, and 6 of them will be ballistic skill 2 up. Most likely deployed behind them, we'll have 2 units of devastator centurions, armed with hurricane bolters and twin heavy bolters each. As each model puts out 18 bolt shots, you're going to activate a lot of the exploding 6s that you can get from the Imperial Fist chapter tactic. Having the Chapter Master aura on all of these guys means that 6 is a lot more likely to come up, as you'll be re-rolling all of those 1s and 2s and have the chance to make even more 6s. If the rules for the Siegebreaker cohort that appeared in the Vigilus book aren't entirely overwritten by this new supplement, then of course we'd look to put them in that, but I'm not going to dwell on it too much, as I strongly suspect that some of the stratagems might be reworded or rebalanced in the new book, much as the Indomitus Crusaders detachment was rebalanced in the new Space Marine Codex. So that little Death Star by itself is putting out 171 bolt shots, and all of those have 4 rerolls, reroll 1s, exploding 6s on the bolt shots, and quite a lot of them are heavy bolters with 2 damage against vehicles and AP -2. Oh, and of course they all ignore cover because they're Imperial Fists, because why not? Next up in the list we have the advancing element. For this we're taking Tor Garadon and 3 units of 10 Stalker Bolt Rifle armed intercessors. In the Imperial Fist doctrine, the Stalker Bolt Rifle will both activate the extra shots on 6s and the extra damage against vehicles, so each of these will be punching at damage 3 against any vehicles, which is very nice indeed. These guys will ideally just move to screen out the Death Star from being charged by any enemy advancing elements, and try and advance slowly to claim midfield objectives. If we just need the extra damage output, then they can just stay still. Tor Garadon is a massive beast in close combat, so he can countercharge if they do encounter any heavy close combat resistance in the midfield. If desperately needed to eliminate a character, we can use the 3 command point stratagem to allow these Stalker Bolt Rifles to shoot a character dead, even if he isn't the closest. Obviously that's quite a big price in command points, but if you really need a character to kick the bucket, then it could be worth it. And finally, to round off the list, hopefully skulking out of line of sight somewhere in the back and denying enemy deep strike areas, we'll have 3 Thunderfire cannons manned by Tech Marines. These Thunderfire cannons can potentially use the Tremor Shell stratagem to slow down any advancing hordes, or otherwise just thin out a whole bunch of enemy infantry that are hiding on the other side of the battlefield. One of the main worries is that the Death Star in the centre doesn't have a very long range with only 36 inches, so having a ton of 60-inch decent anti-everything firepower from the Thunderfire cannons is a real bonus. Overall, my main aim was to focus on as much strength 5 firepower as possible, particularly focusing on heavy bolters. Heavy bolters are just amazing for the Imperial Fists because they have 2 damage against vehicles, they activate their bolt rule, which means they get extra shots on 6s, and they're very decent anti-infantry firepower due to how many shots they get. As I mentioned in my review of the new Imperial Fists leaks this week, Imperial Fists are really going to love the mid-strength heavy weapons, heavy bolters to autocannons, that sort of area, as they'll gain more benefit on the weapons that have more shots, compared with only a small buff from their damage outputs to las cannons. Just for fun, let's take a look at a few of the numbers this list can throw out. It's got on average about 230 shots if you do manage to get every model in range, so in theory shouldn't have much trouble handling hordes. Most of those shots have access to some sort of reroll, so their value is going to be pretty high when cutting through any high body count enemy army. For anti-tank firepower, just the heavy bolters alone in the central Death Star, if they have first turn, that's 81 heavy bolter shots, 45 from the Devastator squads in total, and 36 from the 2 small Centurion squads. We'll do an average of 48 wounds to enemy knights that have a 5+ invulnerable save. With the Chapter Master, on average they get 90 hits due to those exploding 6s. This is because almost every shot hits with the Chapter Master's improved accuracy, so those exploding 6s can get you more hits than you originally started with shots. With that you get 30 wounds, which you get a small buff from the Lieutenant rerolling your 1s, which takes you to 35 wounds on average. The Imperial Knight on its 5-up invul save, because the heavy bolters will push it to that, will save 1/3 of these, so you get 24 wounds on average, times 2 for the amount of damage that you get from the Imperial Fist trait is 48 wounds on knights. This will be a little bit worse on vehicles with 2-up saves, but remember any vehicle with a 3-up save won't be getting a 2-up save for being in cover for any reason, because we're Imperial Fists and we ignore that business. So if you can get the central Death Star in range, then you have a horrendous amount of anti-tank firepower or anti-infantry, and it's at your choosing. Now let's have a look at a few of the weaker areas of this list. Firstly, it's not the most defensive list in the world. I'm basically trying to spam a whole bunch of infantry bodies, which will hopefully saturate the enemy's ability to deal with heavy infantry, though I don't feel that this is anywhere near as tough as if you were saturating with armour, such as the Master Artisan's Armour Iron Hand successor list that I posted last week. So you really do need to make all of that damage count before your army goes down. You can't afford to let the enemy army be repeatedly shooting at you turn after turn. You need to go in for the kill. Secondly, that 36-inch range could be a bit painful. You will have to start the central Death Star fairly centrally, and probably think about moving up slowly towards the enemy. And that could cost you a little bit of accuracy but the Chapter Master should help you out with that. Also, we don't have a ton of close combat counterpunch. Say if we do get bogged down in a massive horde of orcs somehow, then we've only got so much that we can charge in with. The Stalker armed intercessors aren't too bad, and the characters are fairly fighty by themselves, but there really isn't that much damage output that we have in the close combat phase, so it could be something that you might want to trade some units for something a bit tougher in melee. Lastly, in terms of weaknesses, the list isn't very mobile at all. We can only move at 6 inches per turn, so we're not going to be scoring the backfield objectives anytime soon. I'm hoping that the trio of thunderfire cannons would mitigate this somewhat, as you can slow the enemy down, plus eliminate any enemy units that are hiding on objectives out of line of sight, so in theory even if we can't reach the enemy, then hopefully we can kill them. At the moment I'm just really looking forward to seeing what warlord traits, relics or stratagems could make something like this stronger. If we see anything else that can further enhance bolt shots, like that Siegebreaker cohort Vigilus formation, then the enemy can really start to learn to respect heavy bolters. I know this list isn't the most optimised in the world for competitive play, and in all honesty I haven't really thought too hard about it. It's more of a thought experiment to see what kind of thing that you could achieve with the new Devastator Doctrine buff for the Imperial Fists, while we wait for the new Codex. If you do have any other units that you think would be worth including in an Imperial Fists army though, please let me know down in the comments below. I'm very excited to see what we get as new options. I definitely think it's going to be a book to watch. Thanks very much for listening to another Auspex Tactics video. Feel free to subscribe if you'd like to see some more Space Marine content over the coming week. I'll hopefully see you guys in the next video.